guests. This is my first time at Beyond Tellerrand and my first time in Berlin. And I've been having a great time, so thanks for being so friendly. I have been in Germany once before. I went to Cologne for Carnival. Yeah, don't remember much of that, but I had a great time. Some friends invited me over. It was like for 4 days or something, and I think there were 15 of us in a 2-bedroom flat. And I slept under the kitchen table at one point, I believe. But the accommodations are much better here in Berlin. Thank you, Mark. So I came here to talk to you today about real-time communication. And it's real-time communication for everyone. So if you follow me on Twitter, my email list or anything, you'll know that this is an area that I've been really passionate about for a long time. Going way back to Flash Communication Server, yeah. Tim gave us a shout out yesterday, and don't worry, I meditate, I'm okay. And so I'm really happy to be here today to talk to you about open source real-time communication using a newish API called WebRTC. Now, how many of you have heard of WebRTC but not quite sure what it's all about? Yeah, a few, yep. And how many of you actually have played with it and tried to build something? Cool, all right. So for those who aren't familiar, WebRTC is a JavaScript API that lets you share video, voice, and data natively in the browser without any plugins using peer-to-peer communication. So before I get too technical into the details, I want to take a step back and look at the bigger picture, right? Why you should care about WebRTC and why I think it's a pretty big deal. What WebRTC brings, finally, in an open and potentially universal way, is communication. And we trust clear and secure communication to keep us safe, right? And communication is woven into our lives, though it looks more like this today than this. But the way that we communicate today, it kind of sucks, right? And it's not just that we're clueless. The technology itself is partially to blame. We're forced to be glued to these tiny screens. We've got walled gardens, proprietary technologies, all old legacy ways of communicating that are really ripe for reinvention. So this is where you come in. You're not just developers of websites and apps to fuel the App Store economy, right? You're really pioneers in how humans and our things and stuff will communicate. Open source and free WebRTC and related technologies are going to power this revolution in communication. Now, by diving into WebRTC today, you are going to be the first generation of experts. You're going to be the ones building innovative applications before anybody else. And you're going to be ahead of the curve on a technology that is going to be built into virtually everything in the future. So it is going to be everywhere, allowing us to bake these communication channels right into every app, connecting devices, connecting people in really every aspect of our lives. And it's going to happen in ways that we haven't even thought of yet. So as you think about the possibilities, as most people do, you might think Skype, right? Please, it is more than a Skype killer. Think bigger. Think Amazon Mayday button, for example, on the Amazon Kindle. If you press this button, you will be connected to a call center, a little video pops up on the screen, and this person can walk you through whatever your problem is. It might not be too big of a deal for everybody in this room, but for your crazy uncle who calls you all the time to fix his computer, or your grandmother, it might be something really cool and helpful. Think machine-to-machine communication, like Google Chromecast, for example. Your Android device can connect to your TV. You can stream content from the web. You can control with your device, look at guides, interactive guides, and so on. And consider the possibilities in medicine. Like, for example, if you were feeling sick, what if you didn't have to get out of bed and go to the doctor, right? You could, this particular project remotely monitors patients at home and allows them to access their x-rays and records and so on, and of course have real-time consultations with their doctor. So I think this area is really promising. And of course, you can build Skype killers if you want to, but you can integrate them right into your web pages and apps. So you're not having to launch something else necessarily. It can work seamlessly across devices and browsers. And normally I would show a demo here with a couple of devices out in the crowd, all connecting at once, but we're not doing that today without internet. So this particular service is one that it's totally friction-free. You just go to this web page, go to this URL, and it accesses your camera after you allow it. And this works on devices as well as in the browser. And there's one more example here, and I usually love to show this one live and have somebody come up here and be my guinea pig, but I do have a recording of it instead, so I'll just play that. So this one is a Chrome experiment that combines the Media Element API with face detection libraries, and it's kind of creepy actually, but you can choose different faces and it swaps out your face in real time. So yeah, there's like Justin Bieber there, yeah. And it's very cool because as you can see, you can turn your head, you can open your mouth. Yeah, Rihanna, it's creepy. So you can try that later, there's the URL. Play around with that. And it's all open source, so you can grab it and play around with it. Okay, so you see the kinds of things that you can do with WebRTC. And as you start working with it, it's important to know that there are various elements that go together to make it all work. So if you have played with it, you're very familiar with all of these pieces. So it's important to know that WebRTC is very versatile. So with enough effort and the right interfaces, you can get things like servers talking to landline phones, mobile phones sending SMS messages to Jingle clients. You can call from a web page through PSTN gateways. It's crazy stuff that you can do. It's very, very versatile. You could, in a practical way, you could layer technologies to do things like translate live speech from one language to another. There's actually somebody playing around with that. You could use the facial recognition to do useful things like determining the emotion of a caller at the call center. Are all of your customers pissed off? You can kind of detect that and have real-time data there. The possibilities are really, really endless. Now, all of this can get pretty complex pretty quickly and very specialized. So I'm going to just take it down to the API level so you know what the pieces are. There are 3 APIs that make up WebRTC. There's MediaStream, which handles the webcam and mic, of course, and you might know this as Get User Media. RTC Data Channel allows peers to connect and exchange arbitrary generic data. And then there's RTC Peer Connection. And that one that enables the connection between the clients. So that's really the guts of WebRTC, is this RTC Peer Connection. And it does things like bandwidth management, encryption, all these things built in. So let's look at a simple WebRTC connection between 2 peers so you can wrap your head around how it works. So to get our 2 peers connected directly, we need a way for them to connect, right? And a way to contact and find each other, right? So to do this initialization, we generally need to use something called a signaling server. Now this could be hosted on the same server, or you could use a service. There's many different ways to do it. All right, so it could be, a lot of people will use a service for this, but it really depends on what your structure is. So through this signaling, the two people are able to find each other. Then they exchange their capabilities. They perform this handshake, right? And they get client information as to how to find them on the network, what video and audio capabilities they have. Then the signaling server will introduce them, and from there they connect directly in a peer-to-peer, browser-to-browser connection. So this is the architecture for a simple one-to-one connection, right? This signaling server will introduce them and then get out of the way. Now, the signaling server technology is not in the API. It doesn't matter how you connect. You can use, anything from chat. You can send this little bit of information, handshake information back and forth. Chat, email, smoke signals, doesn't matter. So this could be anything from an HTTP post, Google's channel API, XHR polling, anything that works within your skill set and what technology you're using. Now, you probably will use Socket.io with Node if you're doing server to server, just to give you some direction, or maybe SIP with WebSockets if you're dealing with the telecommunications side. Now, in a perfect world, you have one browser connected to another with no plugins or servers in between, right? This is true peer-to-peer communication. However, it doesn't always work this way. We need a little bit of help. And this is where servers come in. So with that reality in mind, this is actually how a connection is going to be made. People will find each other, exchange the client info, then negotiate firewalls and NATs that might be preventing them from connecting, and then communicating. All right, so this is supposed to be peer-to-peer. Why are we talking about servers? But with scaling issues, quality problems, mobile networks, you're going to need to bring servers into the mix, unfortunately. So this is where the fun acronyms of WebRTC come in: stun, turn, and ICE. Let's see how these things work together to solve this firewall problem. So here we have two people, Jane and John, right? And Jane's behind a firewall. She has no way to know her own internal IP address and share it with John so he can connect to her. So she just knows her internal IP, right? So if she sends that to John and he tries to connect to her using that, it doesn't work. It's like sending someone a letter with just the street name and no city, state, or country. So this is why we need stun servers. Now, stun is Session Traversal Utilities over NAT, for those of you who care about these things. And it's similar to whatsmyip.com, if you ever use that, right? Yeah. So Jane will ask the stun server, what is my external address? She'll pass that on to John, and John will do the same. Then they will connect directly, and this is referred to as hole punching. But, unfortunately, it doesn't always get through the roadblocks. We still have the high security networks, mobile carriers, and sometimes stun isn't going to be enough, right? So this is when we have to use something called turn. And this is traversal using relays around NAT. It's similar to stun in that it does the same thing. It connects these two people together. But it's a relay, and it never really steps out of the way. So now we have two ways for them to connect, which is great, right? But this, of course, slows everything down. And WebRTC wasn't really built to do all this handshaking and back and forth. So if, in the beginning, if you tried to connect in one way, it fails. You try to connect using turn, you would have to create a whole new session to try again. So that is where ICE comes in. Now, ICE gives us a way to adapt and keep trying different connections until it gets one that works. And basically what you're doing is sending in an array of different servers. And we just iterate through that until we make a good connection. Now the good thing is ICE is built right into WebRTC, so we don't have to worry about all this stuff underneath. So it might seem that WebRTC is just out of our reach, right? It seems like it's this cool thing we want to play with. But it's not really that bad. So I'm going to take a few minutes and bust some of the myths that might be keeping you from getting started. All right. So the first thing is that it's very opaque. I mean, really, this has been around for a while, and a lot of the things that are in place right now in the standard were put together by these telecommunications engineers because they wanted to be able to send SMS messages and do their thing with their telecommunications networks. So there is a lot of complexity underneath that we have to deal with. However, we now have a lot of different libraries that are going to take care of a lot of that complexity for us as developers. And the APIs are evolving. A lot more developers are involved now. And it's only going to get easier to get started. It's not well documented. Well, if you were looking at WebRTC 6 months ago, I would agree with you. There was like a WebRTC Rocks article that everybody starts with, and a few blog posts and people that were experimenting, but not really a lot of getting started kind of manuals, right? Well, now there are tons of new resources out there. There are, I think, 4 or 5 books now, actual printed books about it. And I just saw a study recently, just last week, I think, that somebody looked at the Stack Overflow questions, and WebRTC is in the top 6% of queries. So there's a lot of people starting to work with it, asking questions, getting answers. Okay, this is the big one that I think has been holding a lot of people back, is it doesn't work in IE or Safari right now, so why should I bother with it? Well, just last week, Microsoft made a big announcement on the Skype blog, interestingly enough, that they are going to definitely be supporting WebRTC in a future version of IE. It's something. So, they really are actively working with Google and with the community to finalize the spec and get it working everywhere. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that effort in a minute. When it comes to Apple, they did officially join the working group back in, I think it was February. They didn't make a big announcement about it. They didn't make a big deal. But they are involved, so there's something going to happen there too. So bottom line, it has momentum, and it's clearly going to happen. So sort of busted. So yeah, this is the blog post that they posted on the Skype blog. So basically, I think they're trying to bring Skype into the browser, so they'll be the first one. But once they open that gate, I think you can't close it again. Can't put the toothpaste back in the tube, as they say. So just an overview of where we are today. Now, I've had to update this chart like 3 times in the past 6 months. But Chrome and Firefox support most of WebRTC today, and they're interoperable, both on desktop and on mobile. Opera is now supporting most of WebRTC as well. And Apple, as usual, as I said, they're not really getting involved, so we don't know yet. And then Microsoft, as I said, they are working on it. So there's also this company called Temesys that built a plugin. So I think that's going to be for older versions of IE, for enterprise especially, WebRTC can work using this plugin. Of course, it's commercial. All right, So there's this site called WebRTC, isWebRTCReadyYet.com. That is a great resource for the very latest of where everything works and where it doesn't. All right. So what about this competing ORTC thing? Who's heard of our ORTC? Anybody? Nobody. Crickets. All right. Cool. Well, it's Object Real-Time Communication Library. And it's an effort. There's a lot of politics involved in all of this. It's actually a community group. It's not the official working group that is working on this. And what it basically is a shim that operates on top of WebRTC that makes it much easier for all of us to work with it. There's a company called HookFlash that started it, and they've got Microsoft, Google, very involved in all of this. So when you start working with WebRTC, you'll get more familiar. You will definitely be looking at this. So long story short, ORTC aims to replace this thing called the SDP interface. And it's the session description protocol. It's the thing that we use to know what everyone's capabilities are, right? And right now, it's an XML document, ultimately, that has, it's really long. There's a site that put together a little interactive thing where you can actually mouse over each value and find out what it is, and it's so random. It's like A equals something, is, you know, these things that we have to deal with. So they want to get rid of that, or at least abstract it, so that we don't have to deal with that stuff, and it's more meaningful kind of interface. And of course, it's object-oriented, which I think we would all agree is a good thing. All right. So is WebRTC worth it? Yeah. Wow. I think so. But I am a bit of a masochist, I have to say. That is me a couple of months ago finishing my first Spartan race. And I don't know if anybody has ever heard of these things, but basically it's like 6 miles up a hill with obstacles that you have to go through the mud and everything. So I like to show this because it really is like working with WebRTC. You get this feeling when you actually build something, but it's like it is going through the mud to get there. All right, so to dive in and get started, I want to give you a few tips. You need basic programming skills. You need HTML, CSS, JavaScript. An HTML editor. You don't really need a lot to do this, to get started. A webcam and microphone, of course, for testing. And the latest build of Chrome or Firefox. Now, I recommend Chrome. They've got something called WebRTC internals that's built in. It's this page you can go to, and it tells you everything that's happening under the hood. It's fantastic. So, of course, you're going to want to test it everywhere, but I would definitely work with Chrome. Now, you don't have to reinvent the wheel at all. There are services and libraries popping up that make all of this much easier to work with. And here are just some of the services that are out there today. Some are already built and ready to use, or you can use these and build them into your own apps. So one of them is this appear in that I showed you. And there's more and more of these popping up every day. All right. Now, if you need more customization and flexibility, you might want to use some of these platforms instead. TalkBox is a great one. And Appear-In just opened up their API, so you can build some custom stuff using that. Xersys is also another company that has hosting. And they'll host the stun servers, turn servers, all of that for you, which is nice. Now, if you really want to get in there and get your hands dirty, you can do that too. There are open source stun and turn servers, node modules, signaling solutions that you can configure in just about any combination. For the telephone end of things, there are frameworks that you can use to integrate with that to send SMS messages integrate SIP clients and all of that. And they're handling a ton of stuff under the hood that you, believe me, do not want to deal with. And there are lots of frameworks for, of course, building just between browsers and devices. This is, let's see, this is a list of some very common ones, but there are a lot other ones popping up. One that I like is simple WebRTC, because as it states, it is simple. Just in these, I think, 12 lines of code here, you can have a complete multi-person chat room. And it's very, very quick. And the thing I like about simple WebRTC is you can extend it with custom modules. So for example, if you'd like that feature that Hangouts has when someone's speaking, their picture gets bigger, they have a module for that. So you can just plug in all sorts of different features. Now, when I got started with this and started playing around with it, as you do, you know, in your bedroom at night and just like hanging out, trying to build something, I built my first chat room. And I needed somebody to chat with, of course, and my husband's in the other room, and that's not really enough. You gotta go out further than that. So I called up my sister, and she lives in the Midwest in Indiana, in the US, and so I called her up. I said, hey, could you just log into this URL? And oh, no problem. I'm at Buffalo Wild Wings. And if anyone has been to the States, you might be familiar with Buffalo Wild Wings. It's this, it's basically this horrible fast food restaurant that you just go to, and they have Wi-Fi apparently. I didn't know this. And so she's like, yeah, I'm just, we're just sitting here, me and my husband, and we both have our computers. Like, okay. All right, so that's a great night out. And so they both logged into the Wi-Fi at this random restaurant, and it worked great. And I was so excited to have this, this conversation, and 12 lines of code. It was fantastic. So it does work. All right, so when you're ready to get started playing with it, I'm sure you'll want some additional resources. You want to dive into this a little deeper. So I have a link on my website where I kind of keep track of the latest useful articles and tutorials and things. So you can grab that. And one that I highly recommend is WebRTCexperiment.com. This guy, Muaz Khan. Amazing stuff. He's doing things like video recording, just all sorts of experiments, all open source. Screen capture, recording, pretty much pushing the envelope of what you can do with it today. So what is the potential of WebRTC? I think Stacy mentioned yesterday about how many devices and stuff there are going to be out there. But the number that I have for WebRTC-enabled devices, which isn't going to be all of them, of course, is 6.2 billion WebRTC-enabled devices by 2018. So this could be, of course, browsers, phones, thermostats, drones, you name it, right? And this is getting the attention of, the bigger businesses, of course, financial services, healthcare, insurance, business stuff, right? It's going to help them connect with their customers, streamline communication systems, and I think really disrupt the telecommunications industry. I think that's why they're so interested. But the most important thing about WebRTC is that it can connect people, right? So take a look.
Not all of our students have the chance to travel abroad and to interact with native speakers of English. What our students really want is to speak English fluently, and we're always asking ourselves, how can we make it more real, more human? created a tool that connects our students with seniors in the USA living in retirement homes.
Hello, hello.
Melissa.
Hi, Dick.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
It's the first time that I'm talking with someone from another country.
I'm very excited to be doing this.
I look like I'm only 25, but I'm 88.
Do you have sisters and brothers?
No, I'm one child.
Only one? Oh, you poor fella.
I live with my old brother. He has 23 years.
Do you know, instead of saying he has 23 years, you could say he is 23 years old.
I tried to go to Lollapalooza that we have next week, I think, in Brazil, but my mom didn't let me.
You got a good mom.
Good morning, dear Julia. Good morning to you.
This is your dad?
That's me and my wife when we were young.
Oh, you were good looking when you were young. And you're still good looking.
My first destiny is United States, of course, because I wanted to put better my English.
Well, you do very well, I must say.
Are you planning someday to go to Brazil?
Oh, I would like to.
You can stay in my house if you want.
If you could just dream and have whatever you want, what do you think you would like to be doing?
I see myself in a big family, you know, with a beautiful wife, you know. I want to thank you for this change of experience, you know. You are incredible.
Obrigado.
You are my new granddaughter, and I love you.
I love you too.
And if you were here, I would give you a big hug.
Oh yeah, let's hug. Oh.
Bye.
Bye.
Yay. So that's just one of the many ways that all of this powerful technology can be used for good. Ultimately, free and open communication creates connection. And I can't wait to see what all of you do with this technology. So I am always available for questions along the way. You know, you can find me on Twitter. I've got a course on this you can take. And I'm trying to be really accessible. I'm sort of I feel like I'm a freelance evangelist for this stuff because I just love it so much. So feel free, please, to reach out with any questions. If I can help you create some revolutionary things, I will have done my job. So thank you.